Okay, so today we're going to do the questions and answers on chemical formula and equations. So I hope that you have tried these questions before looking at the answers. The first question says the chemical formula of two substances W and X are given. Which statements are correct? So let's take each statement and see whether it's right or wrong. W and X contain the same amount of oxygen. Is that correct? Yes. Both of them, each of them has 8 atoms of oxygen. Okay, so number 1 is right. W contains 3 times as much silicon as X. Where is the silicon? No, because W has 3 silicons, X has 2. So that's not 3 times as much as X. So statement 2 is wrong. Statement 3, X contains twice as much aluminium as W. Okay, where is aluminium? W has 1 aluminium, X has 2 aluminium, so this is a correct statement. So 1 and 3 are correct, so my answer is B. The diagram shows a model of a molecule containing carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. How many atoms of each element are in the molecule? Okay, how do we know that? Carbon, which of these is carbon? Remember that carbon is in group 4, that means it needs 4 more electrons to have a full outer shell, and that means it will make 4 bonds. So the circles, which are big and dark black, they have 4 bonds coming out of them. That means we have how many carbons? 2 carbons. Now the white circles have only 1 bond, and the atom that makes only 1 bond is hydrogen, because hydrogen has 1 electron, needs 1 more. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hydrogen. So the hydrogen is 6. And the gray ball must be the oxygen, because it has 2 bonds. And we know that oxygen is in group 6. It needs 2 electrons, so it makes 2 single bonds. And that means my answer is which one? C. Okay? Okay, next question. The oxide Pb3O4 reacts with dilute nitric acid to form lead-2 nitrate, lead-4 oxide, and another product. Now, these equations look complicated, but actually it's very simple. To choose the equation, first of all, you choose the one that has the correct symbols before sitting down and thinking if it is balanced or not. So, the symbols, first of all, must be correct. Okay, Pb3O4, he already tells me that that's right. Nitric acid, all of them have the correct formula of nitric acid, HNO3. Now, how do I write lead-2 nitrate? Lead is Pb, nitrate is NO3. Lead, when you look at the periodic table, you find it in group 4, so it should have a valency of 4, but actually lead is an exception. It usually has a valency of 2, and that is indicated by the valency that is written there, lead-2 nitrate. So he's telling me that the lead has a valency of 2, and that means that I need to put the 2 under the nitrate. So which of these equations has the correct formula of lead nitrate? That's A. Let's take a look at the rest of that equation. Lead-4 oxide. How do I write the formula of lead-4 oxide? Lead, he's telling me in this case, lead has a valency of 4. So I'm supposed to put 4 under the oxygen, but then the oxygen has a valency of 2. So if one of them has 2 under it and the other has 4, you can simplify that. So it comes out to 1 to 2. So PbO2 is the correct formula. So obviously the others are wrong because, first of all, the formula of lead nitrate is wrong. Okay, so A is the only one that has the correct formula for lead-2 nitrate. For which compound is the formula correct? Okay, let's take a look at this one by one. We said, how do we write the formula of ammonia? Remember that we said there are 2 things. There's something called ammonia and there's something called ammonium. Ammonia is NH3, not NH4. So that is wrong. And he's looking for what? He's looking for the one that is correct. Okay. Carbon monoxide. Remember we said, what does monoxide mean? We said if he says something monoxide, you just put one oxygen, not two. So carbon monoxide should actually be something that has only one carbon. Mono means one. Iron 3 oxide. How do we write iron 3 oxide? If he says iron 3 oxide, that means the valency of iron is 3, and that means I should put the 3 under the oxygen. So actually it should be Fe2O3, because the iron is 3, valency 3, so I put the 3 under the oxygen. The oxygen is 2, I put the 2 under the iron. Now, how do I write zinc hydroxide? We said zinc will always have a valency of 2, and the hydroxide has a valency of 1, so that is actually the correct formula for zinc hydroxide. Okay? Okay. Boron forms an oxide. Which equation is correctly balanced? Again, let's check to find that they have the correct formula, and then we check to see if it is balanced. So all of them, boron is not diatomic, so boron stands on its own. Oxygen is diatomic, so oxygen has to be O2. And if you look at the periodic table, boron is in group 3, so it has a valency of 3. So valency of boron is 3 and valency of oxygen is 2, so all of these are correct. Now, which one is correctly balanced? Did you check which one is balanced? Did you realize that it is D that is balanced? In D, I have 4 boron before the arrow, 4 boron after the arrow. Remember we said, if I have 2B2, that you multiply 2 times 2, that's 4. And then how many oxygens before the arrow? 6. How many oxygens after the arrow? 2 times 3 is 6. So that is the one that is balanced. Again, for which compound is the formula correct? Now he's saying ammonium chloride. We said, how do we write ammonium? Ammonium is not NH3. It's NH4Cl. Now, copper sulfide, we said sulfide or anything with a D is what you have in the periodic table. So sulfide is different from sulfate. Sulfate is SO4 and sulfide is the sulfur. And remember that we said copper, he's telling me that the valency of copper is 2. So actually I should put 2 under the sulfur. But then if you look at the periodic table, the sulfur is in group 6. So actually sulfur needs 2 electrons. So its valency is 2. And we said if this has a valency of 2 and the other one has a valency of 2, they cancel each other. So that is actually the correct formula. Iron 2 sulfide, if I say iron 2 sulfide, that means the valency of iron is 2. I should put 2 under the sulfur. And the sulfur also is a valency of 2, so that is actually FeS, because each of them is 2 and the 2's cancel. Silver nitrate, what is the valency of nitrate? The valency of nitrate is 1, so the only one that is correct is B. Okay, the diagram shows a molecule of vinyl chloride. What is the formula of vinyl chloride? Again, a carbon, he already gives me a key actually here, so I don't need to guess what each ball means. So that means I have 2 carbons, 3 hydrogens and 1 chlorine. So which one says that? That's D. 2 carbons, 3 hydrogens and 1 chlorine. Okay, hydrogen and chlorine react as shown. What is the equation for this reaction? Remember that we said if I say a molecule of hydrogen, we said hydrogen is diatomic, so you cannot write it only H. It has to be H2. Hydrogen molecule is diatomic. That means when it is standing alone as a molecule, you have to put a 2 under it. Molecule of chlorine also is diatomic. Diatomic means it has to be Cl2, not what is written in options A and B. So A and B are wrong. C and D. Now, how do I write 2 molecules of hydrogen chloride? If I want to write hydrogen chloride, hydrogen is H, chloride is chlorine, so that's Cl. Now, the valency of hydrogen is 1 and the valency of chlorine is 1. So I have to write it HCl. Hydrogen chloride is HCl. And then I balance. So you don't write it like as it's written in D. That's not right. Hydrogen chloride is HCl. And then to balance, I need 2 hydrogens and 2 chlorines. So my answer is C. Okay? What is the balanced chemical equation for the reaction between calcium and water? So obviously he wants calcium, okay, that's correct, water is correct, to give calcium hydroxide. Now how do I write calcium hydroxide? Calcium has a valency of 2 and the hydroxide has a valency of 1, so I'm supposed to put 2 under the OH, and we said when we put 2 under these ions that we're supposed to memorize, hydroxide, nitrate, sulfate, carbonate, and so on, you need to put a bracket around it before you put the number. So actually my answers, the correct answer has to be either B or D, because in the other ones the calcium hydroxide is not written correctly. Okay, then so we've decided it should be B or D. Now we look at which one is balanced. Which one is balanced? One calcium, one calcium. And then how many oxygens do I have? 2 oxygens. So I need 2 in front of the water. So my answer has to be D. Okay. Which equation for the reaction between sodium carbonate and dilute hydrochloric acid is correct? Again, check to see if any of them has the wrong formula. Remember, how do we write sodium chloride? Sodium chloride, the sodium has a valency of 1 and the chlorine has a valency of 1. So actually, choice B is wrong, mainly because the formula for sodium chloride is wrong. So we look at the others. The others, you need to check that you have the correct balancing. So which one has the correct balancing? Let's take A for example. Sodium carbonate has 2 sodiums. So I need on the other end, after the arrow, I need 2 sodiums. So A is wrong. We already decided B is wrong. C is wrong also because you need 2 sodiums, so you need a 2. So actually your answer has to be D. Okay. One method of producing carbon dioxide is to react calcium carbonate with dilute hydrochloric acid. Which of these is the balanced chemical equation? Okay, again, check if anything has the wrong formula, then you just cancel it out. So, for example, you can't have C because C says calcium chloride. Calcium should have a valency of 2. So when he writes it CaCl4, that is wrong. So C is wrong. Let's look at D. Calcium chloride has to be CaCl2 because the calcium has a valency of 2 and I need to put 2 under the calcium. So far C and D are wrong. So let's take a look at A and B. A and B, first of all, you should realize, I don't know if you remember, that if you have acid with carbonate, it should give you a salt plus carbon dioxide plus water. You can't have HCl before the arrow and HCl after the arrow. So the only possible answer that is correct is B. Okay, what is the molecular formula of this compound? Again, we said if he says molecular formula, that means you count the total number of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens. And we said this one has 4 carbons, 4 hydrogens, 4 oxygens. So the answer is B. Carbon and chlorine form a chloride. What is the formula of this chloride? So he wants a compound of carbon and chlorine. Now carbon is C or Ca? Ca is calcium, not carbon. So C and D are totally wrong. So let's look at A and B. Carbon has a valency of what? Carbon is in group 4, so it has a valency of 4. So actually you should have 4 under the chlorine. So your answer is B. Do we agree with all of this? Okay, the next question says, when propane is burned, carbon dioxide and water are formed as shown. Which values of R and S balance the equation? Okay, so before the arrow, how many carbons do I have? I have 3. After the arrow, I should also have 3, so R has to be 3. So my answer is C or D. Now, before the arrow, how many hydrogens? 8. After the arrow, I need 2 times something to give me 8, and that means that S has to be 4. Okay, which formula represents a compound containing 3 atoms? Remember that this is total 3 atoms, not 3 types of atoms. Sometimes he asks 3 types of atoms or 3 atoms. Here he wants something that has a total of 3 atoms. So obviously, which one has a total of 3 atoms? H2O, 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. Okay. Okay, the equation shows the reaction that occurs when ethanol burns in air. What values of X, Y, and Z are needed to balance this equation? Okay, let's take a look at it. Before the arrow, we have how many carbons? 2. So after the arrow, I need 2. So Y has to be 2. So that cancels out C. So C is totally wrong. Now, before the arrow, how many hydrogens do we have before the arrow? We have 5 and 1. That means we have 6 hydrogens before the arrow. And that means after the arrow, I need 2 times something to give me 6. So Z has to be 3. So we said C is 2, Y is 2, sorry, and Z is 3. So we are basically looking at B or D. Now, what should be before oxygen? How many oxygens after the arrow? If the CO2 has 2 before it, so that means that's 2 times 2, that's 4 oxygens. And the H2O we decided has 3 before it, so that is 4 plus 3 oxygens, that's 7 oxygens. Can you see that we have 7 oxygens after the arrow? Now, before the arrow, we already have 1 oxygen in the C2H5OH. And that means the X has to be 2 times something to give me 6. So that has to be 3. So my answer is D. Are you following? Okay. How many atoms of hydrogen are there in a molecule of ethanol? Of course, if I have C2H5OH, that means I have 5 plus 1. So I have a total of 6 hydrogens. Okay, lead nitrate can be decomposed as shown. Which numbers X, Y, and Z balance the equation? Actually, in order to sit down and balance this equation, you will find that the correct answer has to be 2, 2, 4. Were you able to balance it? Okay, the formula of compounds W, X, and Y are shown. Which statement is correct? Again, let's take a look at each of them. He says W contains twice as many hydrogen atoms as oxygen atoms. W has how many hydrogen atoms? It has 10. Now, how many oxygen atoms? It has 4 plus 5, and that's 9. So this statement is wrong. Are you following? X contains the most oxygen atoms. Okay, how many oxygen atoms in X? It is 7 plus 4, that's 11. But Y will have more oxygens than that. Y, can you calculate how many oxygens in Y? We have 2 times 3, that's 6, plus 6, that's 12. So actually, Y has more oxygen. So when he says X has most oxygens, that is wrong. Now, the next one says Y contains the most hydrogen atoms. Are you following how to calculate? How many hydrogen atoms in Y? In Y, I only have 2 times 6, and that's 12 hydrogen atoms. In X, I have 2 times 7, and that's 14. In W, I have 2 times 5, and that's 10. So actually, X has more hydrogen atoms. Now, choice D says Y contains the same number of hydrogen and oxygen atoms. Okay, Y, how many hydrogen atoms? 2 times 6 is 12. How many oxygen atoms? Well, in the nitrate part, you have 2 times 3, which is 6. And in the 6 water part, that means you have 6 oxygens. So 6 plus 6 is 12. So that is the correct statement. Okay, self-igniting flares contain this. With water, this produces this compound, which is spontaneously flammable. Which equation that includes the formation of the diphosphane is balanced? Okay, again, we first look at the formulas, and the formulas all look correct, but we will need something that is balanced. And if you sit down and check all the balancing, you'll find that B is the correct balanced equation. Okay, are you getting better at balancing? The equation for the reaction between barium chloride solution and dilute sulfuric acid is shown. Which row shows the state symbols for this equation? So, do you remember when we said what things are soluble and what is not soluble? So, do you remember barium chloride is soluble or not? Well, you should remember that barium chloride is soluble, and we said when something is soluble, it is aqueous. So A, B, and D could be correct, but C is wrong because barium chloride is not liquid, it's aqueous. So C is wrong. Now, sulfuric acid, we said all acids are soluble, so all acids should have aqueous written next to it, and that means I need to choose between A and C. Now, barium sulfate, you should remember that barium sulfate is a solid. What about HCl? HCl is also an acid, and all acids have to be aqueous, and that means the A is correct. Okay, let's take a look at this. Lithium reacts with nitrogen to form the ionic compound lithium nitride. What would be the formula of the lithium ion? We said lithium is in group 1. When it loses an electron, it becomes lithium with an extra positive charge. Deduce the formula of the nitride ion. Okay, the nitride ion means nitrogen, and nitrogen is in group 5. That means it needs to take 3 electrons to have a full outer shell, and that means it will have an extra 3 negative charges. Okay, so give the formula of lithium fluoride. Lithium fluoride, then I'm going to write lithium, Li, fluorine, F, and the valency of lithium is what? 1, and the valency of fluorine is 1. So that is lithium fluoride. What about nitrogen fluoride now? N and F, but the valency of nitrogen is what? Is 3, so it has to be NF3. You put the valency of 1 under the other. Predict the formula of each of the following compounds. So, germanium oxide. I look at the periodic table and I find that germanium is Ge in in group 4. Oxide is oxygen, and so germanium has a valency of 4, oxygen has a valency of 2, but then if I have 2 and 4, I find that I can cancel the 2 and the 4, so I end up with germanium oxide GeO2. Remember that if the numbers that you put in or the valencies that you put in can be simplified, then you simplify them. Tellurium bromide. Tellurium, remember that there is many names in the periodic table that are very similar. Tellurium is Te. So Te, and that's in the valency of 2, and bromine is a valency of 1, so it is TeBr2. Give the formula of each of the following ions. So remember that he's asking for the ion. So strontium is Sr, and it is in group 2. That means it has 2 electrons in the outer shell. So to form an ion, it needs to lose these 2 electrons, so it will have extra 2 positives. Fluoride is in the fluorine atom is in group 7. To form an ion, it needs to gain an electron, so it is F-. Okay, complete the equation for the reaction between. Now he's saying it's a reaction between nitrogen dioxide, water, and oxygen. So he's missing the water somewhere, okay, to form nitric acid, and then now we balance. So let's see. When you balance, you will find that you will need to put 4 here and 4 here and 2 here. Were you able to balance it? Okay. The formula of something we've never seen before is this. The formula of barium is 2+. So what is the formula of barium hexane sulfonate? Remember that we said something I've never seen before, that's fine, no problem. I just put the symbols of each one and the valency of one under the other. How do I know the valencies? We said the charges, the number of charges is the same as the valency. So that means that the barium has a valency of 2, so I put 2 under that. But the hexane sulfonate has a valency of 1, so I don't put anything under the barium. Okay, follow the basic rule, write the symbols, valency of 1 under the other. If it is something I've never seen before, the valency is the number of charges. Okay, write the equation for the reaction between zinc oxide and sulfuric acid. So you think, how do you write zinc oxide? Well, zinc oxide, the valency of zinc is 2 and the valency of oxygen is 2, so I don't put 2's under anything. Sulfuric acid is the acid that contains sulfates. The valency of sulfate is 2, so sulfuric acid is H2SO4. To give what? Well, you should realize that when you have, this is called a neutralization reaction or a double displacement reaction. So when we have 2 and 2, we exchange. So instead of zinc oxide, it becomes zinc sulfate. So that's my salt. And then I'm left with hydrogen and oxygen, which is water. And the sulfur dioxide combines with water and oxygen in the atmosphere to produce sulfuric acid, and we're supposed to write a balanced equation. Sulfur dioxide means sulfur with 2 oxygens. Water is a liquid, of course. Sulfur dioxide is a gas. Water is a liquid, and oxygen, of course, is a gas. And remember that oxygen is diatomic, so you cannot try just O, it has to be O2 to give sulfuric acid, which is H2SO4, and then you need to balance. And when you're balancing, you will need 2 to balance the sulfur, the oxygen, because, okay, so you have 2 here and 2 here, and that is the balanced equation. So now I have, before the arrow I have 2 sulfur, after the arrow I have 2 sulfur. Before the arrow I have 2 hydrogens. Okay, hydrogen actually is not balanced, so yes, it needs to be balanced. So hydrogen, 4 hydrogens before the arrow, 4 hydrogens after the arrow. Now the total oxygens, remember, as a hint, remember we leave oxygen till the end, so you should balance the sulfur and the hydrogen and leave the oxygens till the end. Now the oxygens as it is, before the arrow I have 2 times 2 is 4, plus 2, that's 6, plus 2, that's 8. So I have 8 oxygens before the arrow. After the arrow I have 2 times 4, so this is better. Which of the following equations has the correct state symbols for the reaction? Okay, magnesium oxide is a solid, and that's correct in all of them. Now, HCl is what? We said HCl is aqueous, so only A and B are correct. Now, magnesium chloride, remember, barium chloride, calcium chloride, magnesium chloride, all of them are aqueous, not solid, and water is a liquid, so my answer is B. Write a balanced equation for the reaction between nickel 2 carbonate and dilute nitric acid, including state symbols. Now, nickel 2 carbonate, remember that if I say that the valency of nickel is 2, well, the valency of carbonate also is 2, so I don't put 2 under any of them. So nickel carbonate is NiCO3. Nitric acid is HNO3. That will give what? You should realize that any carbonate with acid gives something plus carbon dioxide plus water. And that something is called the salt. So, nickel carbonate plus nitric acid. It will give carbon dioxide and water. And I'm left with what? I'm left with nickel carbonate. Nickel nitrate. Nickel has a valency of 2 and nitrate has a valency of 1. So nickel has a valency of 2. I need to put 2 under the nitrate. So this is the equation. Is it balanced or does it need balancing? Nickel, 1 nickel before the arrow, 1 nickel after the arrow. 1 carbon before the arrow, 1 carbon after the arrow. Hydrogen is not balanced, so I need to put 2 in front of this. So this balances the hydrogen and the nitrogen actually. So this now is a balance. So we're done with this questions. Please study everything, practice the balancing, check before the arrow, after the arrow, and you increase the one that is less, and you keep going until it is balanced.